Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I am going to do a little quick review and demo of the Body Shop shade adjusting drops in Darkening and Lightening. The Body Shop sent these to me as samples a little while ago, and I posted a picture on Instagram, and a lot of people seemed really interested to see how they work, basically if they're useful, I guess. So I wanted to fulfill my promise to tell you a little bit about those. The concept is pretty basic. You have two shades, a white one that lightens your foundation and a brown one that darkens it. This is not something that I generally find myself needing because I am smack right in the middle of every foundation range ever invented, pretty much. I'm lucky that way. But I know a lot of foundation ranges don't have just a broad range of colors, so at the end a lot of people get cut off with foundations that aren't light enough, and a lot of foundation lines don't have very many options for women of color at the darker end of the spectrum. So in come the adjusting drops. These can also be handy if you tan easily in the summer, which I do. I have to be really careful about my sunscreen in the summer, otherwise I will change colors sometimes up to a shade or two. So if you don't want to buy winter and summer foundations, that also is maybe a reason to check out adjusting drops. So just to start off, I'll show you what these look like just on their own. The white one is almost a pure white. It's got a little bit of a pinkish tone to it, and the darkening one is dark brown with sort of a reddish undertone. According to the instructions, one drop of either adjusting color is equal to one shade of adjustment in your foundation, and I've found that to be pretty true with the white one. One drop, one shade, good. With the darker one, I feel like you don't need a whole drop. When I was testing it out, I made some foundations much too dark. Part of that is because I don't have any foundations that are super light. If they need to be darkened, it's only by a tiny little hair. So I only need just the smallest dab of this. So let's adjust some foundations. I have a little sample of the Tarte Amazonian Clay foundation in medium honey, which is fairly close to my skin color, but it is a little bit dark. So I'll just dab a little bit of that on there for you. So, I mean, it's not horrible, but it's definitely too dark and also too yellow. The way I like to use the shade adjusting drops, to start with the adjusting drop and mix the foundation into that, I feel like it just works better that way for some reason. I don't know why. And I use toothpicks to mix the colors because we all know how I love high-end tools. Got just some blobs of foundation and the adjusting drop. And you just kind of mix them together like some sort of eccentric painter. And it does take a little bit of trial and error. I haven't actually mixed this foundation before, so you're kind of seeing how it works in real time. Still not quite light enough. So that might have been too much. Mix a little bit more of that in. Yeah, that is much closer to my actual color. So just blend that in a little bit. I'm not going to put this on all over because we're going to do some testing. So there you go. You have a too dark foundation that is now light enough. So now I'm going to try darkening a foundation. In my opinion, it's not quite as easy because I don't have really anything on hand that's significantly lighter than my skin, but we'll give it a shot. So with the darkening drops, I don't squeeze the dropper to get a full drop out because that usually makes it too dark. I just kind of touch it to my skin. Just a tiny little dab. It's like a quarter of the total amount that I used for the lightening drop. Got a little sample packet of the Guerlain Lingerie de Peau in Beige Clair, which is, I think, too light for me. Oh yeah, that is definitely too light for me. So there's the color. If I put it on, it's not as horrible as I thought at first, but it definitely is a shade or two too light for my skin. And I actually think I need just a tiny bit more. I added that much, so just seriously a tiny amount. And that looks like it's a little bit closer now. So I got that a little bit too dark. I added some more foundation to get it closer to the real color. There, that looks a little bit better. So that is closer to my actual skin tone. It's pretty close in the color depth. It seems like the undertone is a little bit more olive than the original foundation was. So you don't really want to go out and get a completely wrong color foundation and expect these to fix it for you. But if you have it that's just a little bit off, you can adjust the shade just a little bit with these. Another cool thing that you can do with the shade adjusting drops, and it's actually the way that I use them most often, is to lighten or darken your matching color foundation to highlight and contour with. So I'm going to use the Lancome 10 Adul foundation in, what is this? I have it in 310 Bisque, which is actually a really good color match for me. Start out with just a tiny little pump. I mean, you don't want to use a whole huge amount to do your contour and highlight colors unless you're mixing up a little pot of it to use multiple times, which is probably a good idea. Kind of a time saver. The tiniest little bit of the darkening drop. Take my fancy toothpick. That's not quite dark enough, so add a tiny bit more there. So you have that. It is still pretty close to my skin tone, but you can see it's a little bit darker than the foundation by itself. I'm going to take just a tiny bit of that color that I mixed, dab it on there. You just blend it in the way you would with your regular cream contour. I kind of like to make this a little darker than it really needs to be and put it under my foundation. That way it just seems to blend in a little bit better, and it's more forgiving if you don't have the color exactly right. So now I'll go in with just the foundation by itself all over. So with that all done, you can do the same thing to highlight. Get a little bit of your foundation, and I usually put a little bit more of the lightening drop for my highlight, almost equal parts, because I like a lighter highlight. So super light. So overall, I think these are a really interesting product and very handy to have if you need to adjust your foundations, either because you can't find one in your color, or if it's just because you've changed color with tanning or whatever and you need to adjust it just very slightly. Honestly, for highlighting and contouring, I still prefer dedicated products for that. That's mostly just a preference and skill thing. I feel a lot more comfortable with powder contours and highlights than I do with liquids and creams, just because I haven't used those as much. The drops themselves are very opaque, so a tiny bit goes a really long way and that has the bonus of not changing the texture of your foundation too much. If you're using it with a serum-like foundation, it might make it just a tiny bit thicker. I haven't noticed it changing the consistency of any of the foundations that I've used it with. Overall, they're not something that I find myself needing every day because I usually do have a good foundation match. But if you are on one of those far ends of the skin color spectrum and have trouble finding a matching foundation, I think these are an excellent product to look into because they work really well. If you've tried the Body Shop Shade Adjusting Drops or other color adjusting drops, I'd love to hear what you think. You can leave that down in the comments below. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up because that makes me happy, or hit the subscribe button down below, which is even better, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.